Starting from zero, got nothing to lose. Maybe we'll make something. Me, myself, I got nothing to prove. You got a fast car. I got a plan to get us out of here. I've been working at a convenience store. Managed to save just a little bit of money. Won't have to drive too far. Just cross the border and into the city. You and I can both get jobs. Finally see what it means to be living. You got a fast car. Fast enough so we can fly away. We're gonna make a decision. Live tonight, die this way. So remember we were driving your car. The streets of fence felt like I was drunk. City lights stay out before, city on phone lights wrapped around my shoulder. And I had a feeling that I belong. I had a feeling that I could do something. Had a feeling that I could be someone. Shit, my old man's got a problem. Live with a bottle, that's the way it is. Said his body's too old for working. His body's too young to look like his mama went off and left him. She wanted him up from life and said somebody's got to take care of him. So I quit school, that's what I did. You got a fast car. When you're cruising, that's it, ourselves. You still ain't got a job. Not working the market as a Chicago. And all things will get better. You'll find work and I'll get promoted. We'll move out of the shelter. Buy a big house and live in the suburbs. You got a fast car. So you're fast enough so you can fly away. You're gonna make a decision. Leave tonight or let die this way. So remember we were driving your car. The streets of fence felt like I was drunk. City lights stay out before, city on phone lights wrapped around my shoulder. And I had a feeling that I belong. I had a feeling that I could do something. Had a feeling that I could be someone. Be someone. Had a feeling that I could be someone.
We don't believe what's on TV because it's what we want to see. And what we want, we know we can't believe. We have all learned to kill our dreams. I need to know that when I fail, you'll still be here. 'Cause if you stick around, I'll sing you pretty sounds and we'll make money selling your hair. I don't care what's in your hair. I just want to know what's on your mind. I used to say I want to die before I'm old, but because of you I might think twice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Alright, second verse. What if my dream does not happen? Would I just change what I've told my friends?
Hi everyone, we will start the webinar shortly. So we have Rob who should unmute himself and start sharing his screen and we'll be ready to go.
Hello, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can now.
Wonderful. Thank you very much everyone for coming along and making time in your busy days to join us today. Today we're going to be looking at what the value of events is for B2B clients, and how we can drive more value out of them. I think it's pretty much universally our B2B marketing clients spend a lot of money on events, and pretty universally we find ways that we can drive more value for them, drive more leads, more sales, and better customer relationships. So, Andrian and I are going to talk through some easy things you can do to improve B2B events. Just to quickly introduce ourselves, I'm Rob Blackie. I am Director of Social for the UK Ogilvy One, working with B2B clients like EY and many others. I also wear a global hat, disseminating best practice on social across Ogilvy's global business, so that we can learn in one place and then take that and do it in lots of other places. Andrian.
Yes, hi everyone. So I'm Andrian. I'm a social regional director based in Hong Kong. So I'm covering the entire Asia Pacific region, and I have a bit of a similar role to Rob, but at an ASEAN level in disseminating information, working on best practice and innovation across the network. So it's a pleasure to join you here today.
Great, thank you. So if you have any questions through this webinar, please put them into a question box that you should have on your control panel. We will answer some of them as we go along, some of them at the end, and if we run out of time to answer questions, we will get back to you afterwards. So no question will go unanswered. After the webinar, you will get the deck in a day or two by email for your long-term delectation. We will also add you to the Social Ogilvy email newsletter that we send out every so often. And if you want to see even more stuff from us, please do follow us on our social channels, on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on SlideShare. And I note that there are several thousand people like you every month who download our SlideShare presentations to copy our slides. So please do join them by having a look at our SlideShare. So, why do B2B events matter so much? I think first of all, face-to-face in events still have a very large impact on B2B purchasing decisions. Many people want to see the person they're buying from when they buy, so they come along to physical events. Obviously, online events matter as well, but we're going to talk about a mixture of those two. And events are normally one of the places where you get a lot of customers in one place available to be influenced at one time, which is why our clients invest a lot of money into events. And social has now really become an absolutely key part of events, I think in two different ways. The first one of which is, for people who are at the event, it allows people in different parts of the event, or even people sitting in the same room listening to the same speaker, to discuss what's happening at the event, and to have their own stream of discussion while the speaker is going on. And you'll have all seen this happen, particularly on Twitter during events. Secondly, though, it also makes events accessible to a much broader set of people who can't come to every event. So if you think of, let's say, Mobile World Congress, for every one person who goes to the event, there are probably 50 people who follow it in some way online, either watching live video, watching it on social, or some other way interacting with it. So events are extremely powerful for reaching people in most industry verticals we work with. So Events Plus, that we're talking about today, is really our process to drive value from events across the full customer lifecycle. Partly it's about building brand and reputation, so influencing people who don't know your brand. Partly it's about a little further down the funnel, driving leads and sales, but also I think deepening relationship with customers, and very importantly influencing their peer group and their co-decision makers. Many, if not most, B2B decisions are made by a group, not by an individual. Two very important influencers are worth considering who are slightly different. The first one of which are your co-decision makers, so people in the same organization as you, but who have a different job role. So if I want to buy a piece of social listening software, the people who influence me are my analysts on my team who use it day to day, who will tell me if it's any good, but also my CFO who will sign off the money, and my boss who will sign off the money in a different way. But my peer group who influence me are, broadly speaking, directors of social in other agencies or in-house at clients and at other organizations. And those events can be very powerful for influencing all of those groups. I think the final thing to consider from Event Plus is that typically people think of all the value of events happening on the day of the event. And actually, there are lots of things you can do in anticipation of the event that drive value. And there are also things you can do after the event to drive value afterwards. And a typical tactic Andrew and will talk about later is simply to create lots of content at the event, but that can then be dribbled out and used in ways to influence people you want to get to buy your products in the months and years afterwards.
And maybe, Rob, to add on this, we have been running and helping clients run their events for a while. And we just found that there was a need to operationalize that process. So it's why Event Plus came to life, and Rob and other people in Asia, Charlie Lowe, help us in building that offering. So it's offer a really clear process on how to manage it, how to look at it pre, before, and after. So it came out of a lot of event that we actually run. So we have quite of a solid model here that can help any client joining this webinar, depending of the scale of their events.
Thank you. And just to talk you through the structure of the rest of the webinar, we're going to talk briefly about the types of value you can drive from events and what that means for the types of activity you need to do. Then we'll talk in some depth about the practicalities of how you do that. A little bit about the measurement framework that we typically use, and then obviously case studies of where this has been successful. We will only lightly touch on case studies compared to what we could do because we do this a lot. So I think almost whatever your vertical will, we will have probably done something similar that we can share with you if you want to talk to us afterwards. So starting with the process. We think of three broad areas of focus, the first one of which is reach, which is getting to more people to make sure that they hear what your brand is doing at the event. Secondly, making sure that you get deeper relationships with customers and prospects, both face-to-face and online. And I think one of the things that's really important to recognize here is that the interaction of offline and online is what's very important. All of the best quality relationships we all have are offline, but social can be very important at helping us initiate those relationships, but also after we've met somebody once, keeping up with them so that we keep in contact with them. There's also an element of that which is about how do you incorporate social data into your CRM system, which we'll come back to in a bit. And the third part of which is really making sure that the content doesn't just get to your immediate target customers, but also to their peer groups and their decision makers. We think of this broadly in 7 strategic areas, starting from the bottom left and sort of going up and round in a loop. The first one of which is all the activities you do to get people to register in the first place. If it's a large industry event, to make sure they come to your stand or your sessions rather than other people's sessions, to encourage them to bring along a colleague or a friend, and to make sure that fewer of them drop out. Secondly, making sure we initiate the sales relationship online so that it then happens face-to-face. So a lot of that is often about how do you work with your own sales force so that before the event, they reach out to prospects and encourage them to meet face-to-face, and on the day of the event, they try and meet them face-to-face. Thirdly, increasing engagement with event content. What you say at your event probably shouldn't be a surprise to the people who come and see it. So there's a lot of things you can do before the event to get people interested in it beforehand. So that might be teasers for what that content is. It might be a full piece of content. You might send them the white paper 24 hours beforehand. But the idea of all of these things before the event is that people then come to the event with more intelligent questions, more motivated to come and speak to your salespeople, more motivated to come to your stand, and more interested in what you've got to say. On the day of the event, of course, it means that people who might have missed your session can find out more about it and can read when they're in somebody else's session. It also means that people can, who've been to your session, have something to take away from straight away and forward straight away while they're sitting at the event. Additional data capture is often very important. So how do you take signals that people tell you in social that they are interested in a particular element of your product, that they have a particular challenge, and make sure those get back into your CRM system. And a lot of that, again, is often about working very closely with your sales force. Fifthly, how do you drive advocacy from people who have a good experience at your event to their internal stakeholders and their external peer group? A very simple example of that that we often do is send a camera crew to the event, and they sit at the stand, and every time a prospect has a good experience at the stand, they see your product, we interview them afterwards and get them to give their immediate reaction for 15 seconds. We then post that onto social channels, which means that some of their peer group will see it because they will probably share it onwards, and we email it to them so that they can then use it later. That video might only get viewed by 20 people, but if it's 20 high-quality people, it'll often be very, very good value for money. And a camera crew can churn through lots and lots of those interviews on a day if they're well prepared. And Andrea will talk about our preparation shortly. Sixthly, amplification to target non-attendees. What I mean by that is all the people who don't come to the event but are in your target group, making sure they see all of the content that you do at the event. And this is where micro-targeted social, in other words, paid social, is very powerful. And we have lots of techniques for doing clever paid social to get to the people we need to get to. And then finally, a really simple thing that people often forget is what we're calling new lead gen, which is, imagine somebody sees the content from your event. What are you actually doing to make it possible for them to sign up to your newsletter or download a white paper or somehow give you an email address and become a lead? It sounds very obvious, but often people actually forget to do that because they're so busy creating the content. So those are the 7 big pots of opportunity we see. A reasonable question you might all be asking is whether or not we do this ourselves. And we do constantly for pretty much every event we do. We do this particularly at the Cannes Advertising Festival every year, where one of the things we do every year is we create a huge amount of content for different marketing industry verticals that we publish during the event. And during that event, we get huge amounts of coverage because it's relevant to a lot of different people's challenges in different bits of the festival. We interview lots of clients and other interesting people who then share it with their networks. And really, for me, the key outcome is that we get huge amounts of sharing by our peer groups. And every year at Cannes, we succeed in being by far the most talked about agency on Twitter, massively beating people like Google and Twitter themselves, massively beating the other agencies. And really, my favorite fact is, one year Kim Kardashian came along to Cannes, and we got much more conversation about us than she got about herself being at Cannes. So that's my benchmark now for a successful campaign is, can we beat Kim Kardashian? And on that note, I'll hand over to Andriane to talk about how we practically do this.
Yeah, and just to add a bit on that, Rob, so we've been running Event Plus on many of our own Ogilvy events. So recently, our Taiwan team celebrated their 30 years, and they set up a proper Event Plus with a newsroom, inviting media and all of that. So we're applying the recipe for ourselves as well, and that's proven to be quite successful. So now let's deep a little bit more into detail on the process of Event Plus. There's a slight delay. Rob, can you change the slide for me? It seems like there's a slight delay when I'm trying to move them. Okay, wonderful. So let's talk about the practicalities. Okay, so some key areas of success that we can look for. So first of all, it's really important to establish a business ambition. So to really agree on the measurement and the potential dollar value to the business, and validate and determine the level of event plus investment. So what's our ambition around the event? What will be the measure of success? How it will be, what will be the specific KPIs around that, and then that will really help establish your budget on how much we want to invest. Second area of success is really around the consumer insight. So the research that needs to get done before the event in terms of industry conversation, in terms of target audiences, and will really ensure that going forward we have content that can match consumer audience. So in that stage, we really go in detail and look at most popular conversation, who are talking about it, and then we start making lists that will be really helpful while you're at the event live and covering the event. So thirdly, internal alignment. So if you want to go into an ambitious Event Plus program and really drive leads and sell, it's really important your team internally are aligned, sales and marketing, that we make sure we have all the tools system in place to be able to track those leads, and that we have our sales team as well ready to convert them. And then lastly, content planning, ensuring that content is planned for the event. As much as you can prepare template in advance, content, better at the day of the event, it will go. So we'll show you example a little bit later of events we covered with Huawei, and you will see the amount of content that has been built before. So we were really able to run the event properly, because at the event it goes fast. You have the speakers, you have interviews, and if you're not prepared, then it can be a little bit overwhelming. So alongside preparing for content, also around the publishing strategy. So where we will publish that content, which platform, who's going to manage it. If we have an influencer program attached to this event, how we're going to manage the influencer as well, who's going to manage them, how we will get them involved, and the team structure at the event, and how it's going to work when they're there coordinating with everyone. So the three stage, as Rob mentioned, pre-event, during the event, and post-event. So pre-event, there's a lot of planning that needs to be done in terms of auditing the needs across the organization. So from all the stakeholders involved within your company, what are everyone expecting? Establishing those measurement goals. Cross-reference the speakers, people that will be at the event, the media that will also be at the event. So looking at really what will be the agenda, who's going to be there, and how we can leverage it. Establishing a creative platform, and that depends on the scale of your event. But normally you have a team and probably like a visual identity. So it's how we can use that as well in social. And we need to agree on the narrative. So whatever is pre, during, and after, what is the story? What are the key messages that we want to bring forward? We need to agree as well on the engagement channels. So which channels, which blog, are we using email as well? So what is the entire channel ecosystem that we're going to activate around this event? And then the paid, own, and earn mix and search strategy. So what will be the paid budget? Are we having perhaps article being posted on our website? So when we're live at the event and tweeting, we can refer to those articles. And then at the pre-event phase, we can also start activating our channel. We can first start populating our content calendar, create a content bank. So that's quite useful. We can use a lot of perhaps some curated content, some content that we're creating. So either that you can use pre-event or that you have ready during the event as well. creating our visual assets. So perhaps there's a lot of videos, infographic that could be prepared before. If you have access, for example, if it's an event that you're not hosting but you're attending, trying to get the agenda and then can start preparing a bit of content around that. We can start doing some influencer outreach and activating the narrative. So here during the pre-event phase, you can start posting content and to invite people to subscribe to the event, or perhaps if you're doing a live coverage, for people to register to be able to see the live webcast, for example. Then we get into the event as such. So on the ground at the event, it's good to have a multidisciplinary team that will be able to generate that content in real time. We'll talk a bit more in detail about what are the skills and people that you need to have to work around something like this. And then we need also to be ready to deal with all the content that will be created that day and all the channels that we will publish on, but also that we will be monitoring during the day. Post-event, it's about measuring. So there's a lot of different reports depending on the KPIs that you put in place that can be produced. And then post the event, you can also carry on in terms of content and publishing post-content event. And then it's where as well you can, as Rob mentioned, continue the lead nurturing after the event. In terms of deliverables, when we work with client on this, we just wanted to give you a little example of what is delivered at each phases. In terms of pre-event, we look at conversation analysis or listening report, listening at conversation around the industry or the subject that will be covered at the event, the content and editorial calendar, all the copies, template, content, campaign that we can prepare, influencer mapping, partner lists, and then everything relates in regards to preparation and organization. So briefing on the content plan, the on-site organization, approval process, role and responsibility, which should be, of course, be done before the event starts. And in terms of engagement, speaker, influencer following, and start posting content, teaser, announcement, invitation to subscribe. During the event, well, that's really the on-site team that will execute there. So it's for them to look at the key takeout and messages, having photograph and videographers to be there to shoot and produce live update, real-time copywriting and publishing of the content, community management. So we need to monitor if there's responses to all that great content that we're posting and responding to those comments. Influencer coordination and engagement, and then daily reporting if depending of the length of your event. And the liaison between the agency and the client to ensure instant approval through the day. Event goes fast and it's important no one run after each other, and we know who should be approving what when. Post the event, the deliverables are, of course, the report, any kind of debrief with all the team, wrap-up report, recommendation, or case studies, for example. And as well in terms of leads and sale generation, lead sale lists, content template for future nurturing. So the team, ideally, that needs to be in place to deliver something like that. Again, it depends on the scale of what you will be doing. But a project manager at the center of it is quite important to coordinate between all the party engaged. An insight specialist is great to do all that listening, bring insight on what should be the content or key messages that we should be focusing on. A strategy person, content for content development, an influencer management. If you have an influencer program, it's great to assign someone specifically for that. An analytic person to crunch the data pre, before, and after. partners and enablement. So if you're doing this event in collaboration with partners, someone needs to be able to do the coordination. And then a team to do some publishing, distribution, and amplification. So here your media agency could be involved, or PR as well. So that doesn't necessarily need to be one person for each role. One person can play different role, but I think it's just to give you an overview of the kind of skill and capability that could be included in the team. All right, this is moving so fast. So let's go a little bit more in detail in the step for every phase. So if we look at pre-event, typically the team that will be involved around that phase will be all the people mentioned on the previous slide, ideally, so everyone can be aligned and we can assign role and responsibilities. So first it starts with really defining the event objective, and then the plan of action, pre, during, and after. Then it goes into research and listening about the event, the inside, the people that will be there, and then establishing an overall strategy based on those insights that we extracted. Then it goes into content creation templates or adaptation of existing content. As much as we can, we prepare this in advance. And then reach out to influencer partner to start discussing about distribution and amplification. And then the pre-event, then it ends with an event they run through, which is quite important. I just ran with a client an event here in Tokyo. And we were playing a consultancy role with them. And then, we forced a meeting just before the day, just to recap all the steps, approval process, and it really helped them. They say it could have been quite messy, but with all that planning in place, finally it went quite well and it was quite successful. During the event,
if I could just chip in there, I think it's worth thinking about it this way, is that a lot of organizations want to get to be much more nimble in the way they operate. And actually events are a great way to get your own organization to try and behave differently, because you have no choice really but to think about how can you be more nimble on the day. And ironically, it turns out the main way in which most of us can get to be more nimble is through better planning. Because if we've got really good planning, then we can move fast, because we only have to take one or two decisions, like, is this piece of content approved, rather than lots of different decisions at once.
And I will also answer a question, Rob, that came through. So someone is asking, how do you select influencers? So you can use listening tool to do that. So you can see around specific topics who are the influencers. There's also other specialized tool to identify those influencers, depending also of your budget. It's something you can do manually by looking at hashtag and starting to profile people. So there's different way to identify those influencers, but first you need to identify what is the key topics, influencer around which area that you're looking for.
And I would chip in just to quickly say that I think in many industry verticals, people don't typically do a very good job of assessing who is genuinely influential. And a really good rule of thumb, if you want to test something, is if this person emails their email list and tweets about it, etc., and uses their own channels, how many people sign up to your webinar? Because if that number's large, it means that lots of people listen to them. Of course, you need to adjust that for the quality of the people who participate. But what often I think the mistake people make is they only go with really quite traditional media influencers. What I find in quite a lot of industries is there are industry influencers who are quite open to partnership, but are often actually much cheaper to partner with than a traditional sort of media partnership would be. And often they want to partner because they want to get to see inside your company. So if you are Nokia or IBM, if you go and meet up with them and introduce them to your experts, often those influencers will do an event with you for free because they just want to get to know those experts better. So I think there's a lot of mileage in doing the influence work very carefully in a way that I think it's often not done.
Yeah, and it's quite, we could have a full session on influencer program. So it's quite a large subject, and maybe one last point to add on, Rob, is really to the point about evaluating the importance of those influencers, whatever based on reach or relevance, and what is also the value exchange that we will get from them and what they get from us as well. So if they get insider information, that's great value for them. If we provide them visibility as well, that is great too. All right. So if we move forward during the event, Rob, if you can move the slide for me. Okay, during the event. So the team that we involve at that phase, the project manager again, the content team, of course, because you will need them on the ground. And it can be videographer, photographer, copywriters, the publishing, distribution, and amplification team. Perhaps it could be, it's good to have them on the ground. For media amplification, they might not be on the ground, but you need someone to do the coordination with them. The influencer team, especially if your influencer are at the event, you need someone to take care of them, and the partner team as well. So how does the day look like what does the day look like during the event? So the day starts, you have your on-site reporter that start taking pictures, note from the speakers. So from sessions to session, you have a team that will go and prepare that content. So perhaps you might be able to post it quite quickly if it's just copies and text. If it's video or picture, then you'll need to factor in the time that it will take to edit and then get approved. So the designer.
Can I just chip on that, Andrea? Just to say, I think one of the things we will see taking off in the next year will be doing live video streaming from events, because both Facebook and Twitter have made that so much easier recently. And I think that gets very good engagement. So it's really well worth considering.
Yeah, well, actually, our global head of social at Ogilvy sent us a live update today from Facebook F8. And actually, it was a subject that they're covering, a live video, and they will really focus highly on that going forward because they've seen some great results. So yeah, good point, Rob. So when we have all that content produced and edited, then it goes to the approver. Then the content is being uploaded on the channels, and then you have someone that should monitor the channels for replies. So this really go in buckles all day as we go from session to session and the different milestone of the event. And lastly, post the event, you have your team of we just had something before, sorry. So we just wanted to give you some example of content that can be produced out of event. So you can have quotes, Vine videos, infographic, videos, GIF animated. So the range of format can be quite large. So again, it depends of who's your audience, what channel you'll be using to publish your content, and also the resources available. We also have some more sophisticated engagement that can happen at the event. So we set up some newsroom sitting at the event. So you see on the up right corner, that was Social Media Week in London. So Ogilvy set up a newsroom. So the people that were attending the event could see the full team there, seeing what they're doing, live content creation. So that can be quite interesting and dynamic. You could also have some social wall where you display, if it's relevant for your audience, all the content and conversation. So if you have a booth and then you want to engage in conversation with people that are attending the event, it's really great conversation starters to have those walls set up. And it's basically just to connect them with any listening data, and then you can then have them live running updates throughout the day. And then I think we're getting into post events. There we go. Expert involved will be project manager and the analytic team, of course. So here we compile a list of all channel that content what was seeded out of. We run a final social listening exercise to determine how the content was perceived, and as well the reach that we got in terms of share of voice. Run an analytic exercise to determine how content and channels perform, and we'll talk a bit more about measurement, and then compile finding into a report, and then learning and takeaways, and this will be benchmarking for any future events that you will be running. Talking about measurements, we say when you establish your KPIs at the beginning, there's a lot of things you can measure, and that will influence the report that comes at the end, and our focus as well in terms of the strategy. Just trying to go one slide before. Okay, so you can measure engagement, of course, typical social media metric. You can also measure awareness in terms of volume, reach, exposure, amplification. A goal could be as well to find new advocates and fans. So here you can track contributor and influence. Or you could drive traffic as well. So, and traffic is click, it's leads, it's conversion. Or you could also look into increasing your brand share of voice. So here you will look at your conversation volume, perhaps compared to other brand that were assisting, attending the event. And there's different source of data that you can use to get that information. So first, if you look at the content performance, in terms of impression, views, or click, you can use as data sources your own, the social media platform native analytic, your web analytic, or social listening. You could use channel level data. So for example, you want to see how your YouTube channel compare to Twitter or LinkedIn. Then again, you use the social media platform analytics. You could also look at your website analytic if you're tracking the traffic that come from any social channels to your website. And you can even look as well into your Google rankings. In terms of leads and sell data, if you have in place any marketing automated software, any third-party data or website analytics, so that's the different source that you can use to track any kind of leads or sales. And lastly, if you look at a bit more qualitative data in terms of brand awareness, brand perception, either you can use surveys or social listening. And it's important to look at organic versus paid performance, and look as well how they work together. Perhaps I'll show you some example, some case studies where we have a more substantial media budget, and some and one event that we almost had no media budget. So of course, what you can expect in terms of result will vary greatly depending on the organic reach of that platform. A case study. So the first one, I will play the video, but depending on your internet connection, it might lag a little bit. So hopefully you'll be able to see it properly, and we can send it to you afterward. This was World Mobile Congress, not the latest one, but the year before. So we've been working with Huawei for a while, and I've been helping them with their event, with their presence at World Mobile Congress and at amplifying it. So we had a team, our team based here in Hong Kong, flew to Barcelona and then activated all our firepower. So from the content and production team to our social media team to really make sure Huawei's voice was loud and clear at the World Mobile Congress. So we've done again this year. The case study is not ready, so I will show you this one from last year. And this is really a big scale event plus. So let's have a look. So really a big scale event, huge amount of content being produced every day. There was a huge team on the ground from the Huawei side and Ogilvy side to make this possible. But as you could see, we managed to really own the conversation and really have a strong presence at the event, which was quite beneficial for Huawei. Another example, which is a smaller scale event for Huawei, it was for UBBF. So it's Uber Ultra Broadband. So quite a specific subject here. And there was quite a few key messages that Huawei wanted to emphasize during UBBF. It's an event that they organized. So the big topic discussed at the conference was about connectivity and speed, telecom provider need, and help them realizing their new role in an evolving industry ecosystem and understanding what customer value and adopt new route of innovation. So quite a specific subject, quite a specific target as well. So how the team approached it is, in addition to providing live updates at the event with our social content hub, they debuted new format, so Periscope and Vine, and they also incentivized the participants and the audience to engage before the event and holding some mini contests on Twitter using a hashtag. So The result of that activation and Event Plus on that event is that we got some great participation in terms of the competition that we ran before the event, which built a bit of, some build up before the event. We got quite a huge amount of impressions, 6 million, and also quite good amount of mentions during the event and also after the event. And the hashtag would also use would also a great volume of people that were using the hashtag. And for this campaign, there was almost no media investment, so the results were quite good. And I remember, our team worked really hard on this and really engaging with people at the event and doing some ads at the speakers, and they really managed to get some great amplification from it. So that's the two cases that we had for you. So I can tell you, in Asia, we ran Event Plus for a range of clients, from Huawei to UPS to an e-commerce platform that I'm working currently on. And depending of the scale, the principle of Event Plus can apply. And there's so much content and conversation that can be generated from those 1 or 2 days event that sometimes we just don't leverage enough. So it's quite an exciting space, especially for B2B clients, because you run a lot of events, and there's so much that you can get out of it in carrying on the conversation and driving leads from it. Oh, and that was just some example of some of the content. So you see, it's quite of a large range of content with different videos. So because quite dynamic in terms of the content that we managed to produce.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Andriane. Who has questions? I'm just going to pick up on one specific question I've had, which is really about whether or not we could talk a little bit more about how we use social content to optimize lead gen beyond email automation or on-site engagement. And I was going to pick up on this, and Andriane, you might want to chip in.
Yeah.
To say, firstly, I think obviously email remains incredibly important for all of the traditional things we've done with it. But it's also important because we can construct custom audiences that we can advertise to on social channels. So for those of you who don't really know about custom audiences, a custom audience is where you can target a specified group of individuals on the basis of their email addresses or some other data about them. Most commonly it's done for email addresses. It's called custom audiences on Facebook, tailored audiences on Twitter, and Google Customer Match on Google's properties. And we expect that LinkedIn will probably have a version of that in the not too distant future. So of course you can get people who engage with you in an event, and then you can advertise to them afterwards, as well as send them emails. And the reason that's really important is they won't obviously open every email from you, or even if they do, they may not fully engage with it. This gives you another opportunity to get the same content to them again. So custom audience is obviously very important there. The other thing that we do a lot of is what we call micro-targeting through social, which is using all the different ways you can do very tight targeting on social to get to a very specific group. So if I want to get to IT directors who work in retail, in large retail companies, there are lots of ways I can target my social content so it only goes to those specific people. And the reason that's so important is if I interview somebody who comes to my stall at Mobile World Congress, like if I interview Andriane, for instance, and she works as an IT director at a retailer, I can then take that video and promote it globally to IT directors who work at retailers, so that only people who care about that specific content and for whom Andriane is particularly influential see that content. And the great thing about that is you're then matching the audience's interests very, very closely to the content you're giving them. So it can be micro-targeted. And typically when we do that, we see much higher engagement rates than you normally see. It's not uncommon to see 2 or 3 times the engagement rate that you normally see. But also, because you're targeting to a very small audience, the media cost is extremely small. So rather than this being a typical media campaign where you might spend tens of thousands of dollars to reach audiences, often the media cost behind these sorts of things in the hundreds of dollars or even in the tens of dollars. And so, of course, that means that while media is an enabler, but you're not enabling to get mass reach, you're enabling in something that's much closer to traditional direct mail or highly targeted email. So now we talk a lot about social CRM as being a way that we unlock that for people. So taking all the data that exists in social networks, that people give to social networks, and combining it with the data that we have as people who own that data in a CRM system and in a sales system. Anyone else have any other questions?
There's a couple of questions there. Someone is asking about what's the difference between an event team and an event identity. I'll probably say event identity is like the visual identity of this event, and perhaps the event team are the key team that will be covered and the key messages that will be covered during the event. So quite simply, I hope it answer your questions. Another one here, do people use bespoke event apps during the events to navigate their way around the event and speak to other delegates? I can tell you about, I attended an event which was about mobile, an industry event, and the organizer used NFC tag. So before we enter the event, they give us a little card, and then we're connecting to our LinkedIn profile. So then they could send us some information during the event. In terms of specific apps, I don't know, Rob, if you've seen anything around that. Personally, I have nothing in top of my mind.
So I think quite a lot of events do apps now. However, I think the extra value you get from an app normally only justifies it if you have a very large-scale event or if you are the organizer, particularly of a large-scale event, like, let's say, South by Southwest, that somebody mentioned in the question to us. I think for a lot of other purposes, actually using very, very simple things that just get people's email addresses or do very micro-targeted social or one-to-one engagement is often a better use of your money. By the way, I've just noticed that on this slide there's a wrong Twitter handle for me. So it's actually, my real Twitter handle is at Rob Blackie _ OO, not at Rob Blackie. Couple more questions. How do you calculate leads? I think it's going to differ quite a lot by clients, but I think they really come into 2 forms. One form are the classic leads that come into your traditional lead gen system, typically as an email address, and that's normally one of the core aims of anything you're doing. However, I think for some sorts of clients where they have much more high-end products, those leads are sometimes inputted face-to-face. So, for instance, we're working with EY, the big global consultancy. A lot of the leads they would get with people who might be extremely senior in a very big business. Those people don't typically fill in a lead gen form on a website, but they will talk to a senior executive at someone like EY and say, yes, I'd like to hear more from you. And they will then go into the sales system that way.
Yeah, and that question, Rob, relates to another question that we have around if we suggest microsite to do data capture around registration, around the event, and then perhaps to carry on with leads. Of course, as much as you can capture data in a digital way, better it is. But it depends, as Justrom mentioned, which industry and which level of people you're talking to. but then you can reuse that data quite interestingly in the future if you manage to put it in one central database.
Great. I can see we're about to run out of time, but there are some unanswered questions. So I will promise for people whose questions we haven't answered that we will answer them later. But of course, feel free to tweet at us as well. Okay. If anyone has any questions afterwards, please do feel free to tweet, to drop us an email, or to contact us any other way you can think of. So thank you very much for your time today, and we will look forward to seeing you soon.
And
goodbye from me.
Thank you, Rob. A lot of people ask us about the deck. You just need to go on our social at Ogilvy website, and the deck will be posted before end of the week. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a great end of the day.
Thank you. Goodbye. Let's check my screen is starting.
Caught up in my tape. Don't care what you said at me, I'ma bite your feelings out. I miss you in the basement. But your brother was a good substitute for you. And if you love me, but you never let me go. When the roof was on fire, you never let me know. Say you're sorry, honey, but you never really show. And I can leave the party without ever letting you know. Without ever letting you know. Rufus, oh, let me love, oh, what you so. Rufus, oh, let me love, without ever letting you know. Rufus, oh, let me love, oh, what you so. Rufus, oh, let me love, without ever letting you know. Rufus, oh, let me love, oh, what you so. Rufus, oh, let me love, without ever letting you know. Rufus, oh, let me love, oh, what you so. Without ever letting you know. Caught up in my tea. Caught up in my tea. Just like money when I speak. Caught up in my tape. And I miss you in the basement. Yeah, caught up in my tape. My body's on the pavement. Oh, and if you love me, but you never let me go. And the roof was on fire, you never let me know. Say you're sorry, honey, but you never really show. And I can leave the party without ever letting you know. Without ever letting you know. Rufus, oh, let me love, oh, what you so. Rufus, oh, let me love, without ever letting you know. Rufus, oh, let me love, oh, what you so. Rufus, oh, let me love, without ever letting you know. Rufus, oh, let me love, oh, what you so. Rufus, oh, let me love, without ever letting you know. Rufus, oh, let me love, oh, what you so. Without ever letting you know. Caught up in my tea. Caught up in my tea. Just like money when I speak. Caught up in my tea.